And that's the historical context that we see throughout the entire history of the Jewish people, whether it be Europe, Morocco, Yemen, Russia, as we've moved around the known world of the air quotes ancient world. These are the things that you see typically. The Spanish, we can also get into that. I don't know if you can look stuff up online, but there was
I can, yeah.
There was a sultan in Turkey who had specifically told the Spanish after because this is another Hebrew Israelite misconception, and this is part of the educational part of things. They make the claim that so many of them came to the New World, let's say Mexico, and you see, I'm looking at the chart that you have right here with the Native Americans and all that stuff. But it was only 500 years ago, and documentation was a big thing. Uh-huh. And it was documented that about 60% of the Jews that left Spain went to Turkey because the Sultan of Turkey was the one who decided to take the Jews and opened them in with open arms when the Spanish Inquisition was happening. Uh-huh. And I'm not saying the Jews didn't go to the New World, but right. Just numbers-wise, it doesn't make sense. Just numbers, it doesn't make sense. Geographically, it doesn't make sense. The amount of ships you would have to send over 250,000 people to the New World for them to all be over here, mathematically, it doesn't make sense, especially with the capabilities of the time. Everything that we go with as a Jew, typically, my Rabbi Levine, said to me one time when I started becoming more religious about 10 years ago, like fully Orthodox, he had mentioned to me, he said, consistency. Everything you see in the Torah, everything you see throughout history has a sense of consistency to it. It doesn't mean it's exactly the same, but it has a sense of consistency, and everything we also know in the Torah has context.
That too.
What's that? Bobby
Don't
Brown.
Be cruel, because I will never be that way to you. I don't be cruel.
Wait, who's Bobby Brown?
Bobby Brown was in a New Edition, and he was in the Ghostbusters 2 with the Gumby haircut. He was married to Whitney Houston.
No.
Yeah, you don't know who Bobby Brown is? Okay, my prerogative.
We live in a bubble a little bit, you know what I mean? And listen,
my prerogative. I can do what I want to do. These are old R&B songs. Okay. So go ahead.
So he goes to Yepeth and them, and this is what they say to him. He goes to the Arabs, and the Arabs say, "Listen, we like everything that you say." Ishmaelites, right? In particular, this is the words that they say before they really formed into being Arabs, and they say, "Listen, we like everything that you bring to the table, but we like to be cunning." You know what I mean? They like to lie. They like to cheat. This is what it said.
Where's this account found?
So this would be back in the time of Genesis.
So can I tell? I'm going to tell you something so as a Christian, I'm just giving you my perspective. Yeah. I don't like that story because it places Yahweh's decision to have a people receive the Torah based upon their own merit, and I think Deuteronomy 7:7 militates against that.
Yeah, but it says specifically it's because Abraham said he would teach it to his children, and that's the consistency.
But that's in the Talmud, right? But that's in the Talmud, right? But that's in the Talmud, right?
Yeah, we can go with this.
Well, why does God tell him leave your family behind?
Why? Because
they're idol worshippers. But tell me what you think about this, Deuteronomy 7.
But that's the beauty of the oral Torah, then. I guess this is the secrets that we have.
Yeah, but it can't contradict, though.
But it's not contradicting in the sense of this. Look at the consistency. When you see Jewish people, especially we're talking religious, what are we constantly doing? We are passing down to the next generations. That's the whole point of the oral Torah, is you pass it down because you have to, in order to fully absorb it, you have to fully live it. Also, because you have to, in order to fully absorb it, you have to fully live it. Because you have to, in order to fully absorb it, you have to fully live it. Because you have to, in order to fully absorb
all the praises and the honor goes to Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai Bahashem, Recha Ha Kodash, and double honors to the elder apostles and elder bishops of Great Millstone. Honors as well to you, brethren. Shalom to you, few sisters, and shalom to the hopefully elect. Peace to you. I'm not going to make this video long, but I scrolled through this video, got some points out of it, and I saw vocab go into some old R&B, which sometimes make you think this man he acts like a Jake. He knows some things. I'm speaking of vocab, and then you get so caught up because he's so anti-truth, right? But when you really think about Israelites, Jeremiah 5:28, they surpassed the deeds of the wicked. But maybe vocab was just an agent set up to learn our understanding of who we are, and he just looks like he could be a Jake, but an Edomite. But anyway, I want to really touch on the video, this part at the end of the clip first, where he says they pass it on down to generations, and in order to be able to pass it down, you got to fully live it. So I'm going to speak scarcely on this because they don't allow me to say, any of us, in the truth. There's things we can't really say. So I'll say it in a way that we all can understand, Lord's will. Okay, so you don't see them in gangster rap, right? You don't see them in various. Now, I'm not saying that some of our people ain't mixed amongst them, but in a whole, as a nation, you don't see them doing the things that we're doing, right? As a whole, in a nation. Because now, if you look, you'll see some of them over there. Yeah, they get down too. You know what I'm saying? But as a whole, you don't see gang violence on a level between them. What I mean by is one particular isolated group, they have gang violence. Okay, so in order to fit the curses, it would have to be a situation of your eye being evil towards your brother. You shall leave the wife of your bosom, right? You will hate your wife will leave her children, or the father will leave his children and his wife. The wife will not love her sons and daughters, all the curses that fit and plague the real biblical Israelites. So again, my question is, if I make a question or a statement, if these guys really fit the prophecy and they really believe who they are and they're passing it down to generations, why aren't they telling everybody else to follow this law as the head nation of the Torah? And there's a scripture I want to get, a scripture that Vocab pulls, Isaiah 42:6. The Lord has called thee in righteousness and will hold thine hand and will keep thee and give thee for a covenant of the people, for a light to the Gentiles. So if this is the case, why haven't they given it to a light of the Gentiles? And the question I would have for Vocab, during Romans 9, when it says, for the covenant of my people, the promises, Israel, who gets the promises, the covenant, the glory, and the giving of the law, Vocab in them says these are spiritual Israelites, right? When this is speaking of this. But for whatever reason, when he sits up there with these guys, I don't know if they are going to touch on that. Okay, then how can they claim that they're allowed to be the real biblical Israelites, which they just now start calling themselves Israelites or other people? But how can they lay claim and call themselves the fleshly biblical Israelites when all the Christians question us? How do we know we are Israelites according to the flesh? This is why they say, okay, it's the spirit. So why isn't the same mindset being pushed and influenced against the people that they speak that are the people of the Bible? This Dr. Brown says he's the people of the Bible. But Romans 9 says it's according to the flesh who are Israelites. So we get it. They are saying it's correct, although we don't believe it's them. But what they're saying is correct. Why aren't these same conversations geared towards Dr. Brown saying, wait a minute, you're not them. You're the spirit. We all the spirit of Israelites. I don't hear that either. But, hey, what can you say? Vocab, he's going to pick and choose who comes up on the panel, and he may have a little arguing here or there, but that's who they ought to be really targeting. If you're going to target us, you target them. But now, anyway, this person who claims to be who he is, he goes on to say that the people of the Bible left and went down into Turkey and various other places, and there's history of certain things. Again, we're muzzled on talking about certain things, but what they don't understand is that there were so-called African Americans in Spain. And even before the so-called transatlantic slave trade, through the sub-Saharan slave trade, you had, what you think they were doing? They were traders hundreds of years before the transatlantic slave trade, right? And our people, going all the way back from the Moors of Europe, we were in Spain anyway. And they came into power under the authority of even us, believe it or not, and started selling slaves from the eastern parts of the world to the western parts, down in Brazil, Americas, and various other places, right? So there's a lot of history on the trade. So he said it was impossible to have them, with all the modern technology, ship all of them to Mexico. Well, we understand that they were already here, right? But this is why they won't go into the Apocrypha. They don't really want to go into the New Testament. But it claims, you know, the scripture says, out of the Syrian captivity, it took counsel, King Shalmaneser V, if I remember my history correct. Then they took counsel and came over to another land. That's in the Apocrypha, right? So there's already history on the biblical Israelites being here. There's artifacts, right? It's already been proven when the so-called Spaniards and Edom came here. They said this must be one of the 12 tribes, the lost tribes of Israel. So I don't know. It never makes sense what these people say. But yeah, they came to the New World all right. And then you got to go to the history of the Arabs and the funding of the so-called Arabs. The Arabs was already doing it. But then when it came to the slave trade, as the transatlantic slave trade with the Israelites, it was all about money and business. So they got funded and built the ships. One of the first ships was called the White Lion, right, if I'm not mistaken, and brought us into slavery. Let's go to Deuteronomy 28 and 48, right? Now, when you go to Deuteronomy 28, there's some different portions of time. Therefore shalt thou serve thine enemies, which the Lord shall send against thee in hunger and thirst, and in nakedness and want of all things, and he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck until he have destroyed thee. Now, obviously, when you read the commentators, the Cambridge and all these great scholars, they're not going to say, well, wait a minute, this is the mystery. Who is these guys? Who is this born in slavery? So, you know what they're going to do? They're going to make up something. Oh, that happened in 70 AD. Understanding when in the last days, his elect will wake up, the Israelites will wake up, and then we will see that it's us. And we don't have to go to scholars to get the authentic understanding of what actually happened, because this is a spiritual thing. The truth is spiritual. Okay? And so, lucky if during the video I had a slip of the tongue on anything, but for the most part, this is what happened, and this is how we got here, right? From Spain. And there's even history and stories of how there was little black children, so-called black children, African Americans, which we'll say Jews, Israelite, so-called black Jews, who was picked up and brought into slavery, right? There's all kinds of history on that. Let me read this. The Atlantic, you can Google all this. The Atlantic slave trade began in 1444, with Portuguese traders brought the first large slaves from Africa to Europe in 1526, right? After they shipped the ones off that were already there, okay? Portuguese mariners carried the first shipload of African slaves to Brazil, to the Americas, to establish the Atlantic slave trade. And when you go into the history, when the Most High brought judgment, he brought judgment harsh and in his right, correctly. You cannot tell me the things that we suffered, the things that we endured, and even the suffering of today, you know, which is part Christianity, but even the suffering of today and what we're going through has nothing to do with the judgment of the Lord. But you know what they said? They were the Canaanites. They were the curse of Cain. When everybody knows skin color really had not much to do with nationalities, right? Esau made it more prominent. But for the most part, Shem, Ham, and Japheth had melanin, but they were different nations. But this is part of the slavery that they put on our people. Slavery in Spain can be traced to the Phoenician Romans era in the 9th century. Muslim Moorish rulers and local Jewish merchants traded in Spain and Eastern Europe. Who's the Muslim Moors, right? A lot of them were Jake. Some of them were Jake. And then you had so-called Arabs, right? So you had our people involved in some of this. It says in Eastern Europe, Christian slaves. Spain began to trade slaves in the 15th century, right? And its trade reached into the peak of the 16th century. The history of Spanish enslavement of Africans began with Portuguese. Okay, that's pretty much all I'm going to say on that. So you had our Israelites who converted to Islam, who converted to Moors, because Moors is a form of Islam, who were already there in Spain, sold out, okay? And just as we do today as so-called black Muslims, we'll fly over to Mecca and deal with the other nations in the name of Allah. We'll do the same thing. And then when money's involved, you will team up with them and you'll do business. Nothing new under the sun. Let's go to 68 verses to get the point. And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships. When you look up this word Egypt, Exodus 20:1 says, the Lord have brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage, which I'm quoting that, but that's what it pretty much said. So that's what a form of it means, going back to Mizraim. But the Greek word is bondage. Again, with ships. Now, when you go to some of the translations of Yiddish or some other forms of Hebrew translations, it said, ye will sell yourselves. That was a good cover-up, but it didn't work. You will sell yourselves. But when you go into the original, it doesn't say that. In fact, when you go into the original writings of the Old English, it says the word, let's keep going, as I spake unto you, and there thou shalt see it no more again. And there you shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen. And in some translations say it's maids and servants, and no man shall buy you. Like this word buy is an Old English word anyway, meaning be beside you or say or redeem you, like redeeming your purchases, as they would say in the store. So, all the twists and spins. And if this guy came up to us and start speaking all of this madness, we would deal with him thoroughly in scripture and in history, right? And tell him that at the end of the day, if you were the peoples, as 1 Chronicles 17:9 says, when I plant thee, they should the children of wickedness shall not waste them evermore, right? And they will dwell there safely. If that's the case, and you are the people of the Bible, according to scripture or Torah, then why isn't the whole world following under your rulership of doing the right things about the laws and statutes and commandments? Now, we all know in the dietary laws how it's supposed to be. And the people that's controlling the product, food codes and all that stuff, it's all merchant and money and greed. All you got to do is look up that J word in online etymology. I'm not even going to say what it is. You look it up and see what it says. Right? You are supposed to have the whole world at rest. They're all supposed to follow the Shabbat, all the holy days, all the dietary laws. They all supposed to flow unto you. Now, they admitted that all nations must flow unto them because they're the people. But the Christians say, well, it's a spiritual thing when it comes to us Israelites, but when it comes to them, it's a physical thing. I'm still confused on that. Anyway, I hope this lesson was edifying. That's all I have on that. Shalom.